Hi, everyone. It's Deborah Hamilton, and today we talk to Brett Lyman and Jeremy Cohen of the seminal case, the precedent-setting case in Massachusetts, Lyman v. Lancer, where shared custody was awarded after an appeal. They have set precedent on giving people the right to discuss in a thoughtful and patient way why sharing a pet may be in the best interest of the pet. And now that we have 7 states that require judges to consider the best interests of pet, this case may be the bright line we all needed to have a considered discussion about what is really in the best interest of the pet. So let's go see what Jeremy and Brett and I talked about. It was incredible. Hi, I'm Deborah Hamilton. Welcome to my podcast, Why Do Pets Matter? 10 years ago, with my iPhone and a script, I recorded the first episode of the Ultimate Pet Resolution Summit, which chatted with experts about conflicts over animals. Our conversations were intimate, honest, and illustrated how disagreements over animals occur and how those disagreements can reshape people's lives and relationships. In November 2019, I started Why Do Pets Matter, a new podcast that continued these informative discussions. I'm so excited to have you here with me, continuing my exploration into a more meaningful conversation about why pets matter to all of us. My guests and I will share ideas, stories, and experiences straight from the heart, unscripted and holistic. From the bravest moments to the most brokenhearted, we will explore how to resolve disagreements over animals differently. One thing I know for sure is I want to have more meaningful conversations that will help all of us unlock that deeply felt human-animal bond that drives the emotions of conflict. Hi, everyone. Deborah Hamilton, and this is a long-awaited Why Do Pets Matter? I have been trying to get onto Jeremy Cohen's schedule because he has had one of the most illustrious careers in the dog litigation venue. His practice is Boston Dog Lawyers. He is the Boston Dog Lawyer. And I am so grateful that he has brought his client, Brett Lyman. The two of them made Massachusetts history in the courts by taking a shared pet question to appeal and really winning at the end of the day for the pet, which, you know, everyone, is what I always want to do. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about them, the pets. So I'm so glad both of you are here. Jeremy, you've been a good friend for so many years. We have navigated this venue very often. And Brett, I'm so glad to meet you because I'm so glad that you took the time and had the fortitude and the patience to really work through this so that it was in the benefit of your dog. And I'd love to hear more about your dog. But of course, here at Why Do Pets Matter, we start with asking one first question. First, Jeremy, and then Brett. Jeremy, why do pets matter to you?
I recently experienced a new component of that definition, that answer, because a couple weeks ago, my Maisie died. And she's our logo. She's in anytime there's an interview on TV or there's a newspaper article, there's Maisie's face. And it's just been devastating 2 weeks. But the reason pets matter is this. I decided to post about this. And the feedback and the people who I'd never have known and the cards people have sent me from strangers, the people who are reaching out saying, here's how you're going to get through this. Here's how we're going to get you through that. This is why pets matter. I'm communicating with people that if I didn't have this line of work, I never would have heard from them. I never would have known how great people can be in these times of just such devastation. In this case, Maisie matters because she's bringing me an understanding of how people get it and how people rally around the pet owner who's suffering. And you know what? I've been doing that, and I didn't realize how many other people are willing to do it. You don't have to be a lawyer uh, or a professional to rally around and to know how to rally around the people who are hurting. So it's really amazed me how great people can be in these difficult times. And that's why, to me, suddenly pets matter for a different reason.
I have to say that that is so beautifully put because I lost three pets in the last month. So it was, I know from where you come. I lost two older boys and an entire litter of puppies. So I received the same kind of outpouring of love from people because, of course, in the breeder world, that happens, and we all know how harsh that is to live through. Our girl is fine, thank God. But we lost the puppies, and then the two boys, they were older, but still never enough. My motto is I would never give up a moment of the adventure with them
Mm.
to
Oh, that's
miss this part
right.
because our lives, like you said, she's your logo, you see her every day, and you know what, she's there every day, she's there in your heart, she's there in the room, you'll hear her, you'll smell her, it, it
Right.
is it is what keeps us going. I mean, people say I'll never get another dog, and I said, well, you're missing out on another kind of adventure. It's never the same, never the same. Thankfully, some of them have been really naughty adventures, but so I hear you, and the outpouring that comes from people who I tend to keep it, close to the vest because I usually can't survive half the time when the dogs go. So I love that you shared it because it is important for people to know that it's okay to grieve. It is a necessity. So I'm sending you a virtual hug, my friend, because
Thank you.
there will never be another one, but you know what? There's going to be another who's going to be that other dog. And I don't know if you've gotten it yet, or if she had a sister or a brother, but when you're ready and you do, it will be an amazing adventure. And please keep me posted.
We will. So, that's such a great phrase that, well, two of them, that you'd never miss the adventure because of the last few moments of the pain of dealing with life, but also that she's everywhere still. My wife and I have been going around fixing everything from over the last 12 years that Maisie bit, ruined, tore. And we're painting things, we're replacing rugs. Her fur is still everywhere. Nothing that bothered us during the time, but now it's just time to get things ready, perhaps for the next one
And
to
the next
ruin and
one to
destroy.
chew. And you know what? You probably laughed every time you found something where she left it. She was saying, "Did you find this one? How about this? Did you find this?" Yeah, I know you're going to spit your coffee out because they're like, "Yeah, you didn't find that one while I was alive." So,
That's good.
oh God, yes. So I love it. And this is why I do this, because pets matter on so many levels. So Brett, I'm so glad you're here. And it's your turn to tell us why pets matter to you.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I guess I don't know. It's the same reason anything matters. They matter to us because we care, and they become such a significant part of our lives. In the relationships that we share with them are meaningful and significant. And so um, I think the other thing is they tend to, even though they're not human, they bring out the best in humanity in a certain way. And I think that for each of us, when you've shared a relationship with a pet that you've had for a long time, I think we're better for it as well. And I think I see it when I even just taking my dogs for a walk, even just everyone who meets and interacts with them, you just see people connect, and it just brings out the best in everyone. And so I think seeing that, the way that they affect us, and also just the opportunity to care for them, I think also brings out our better side. And I think over time, we come to recognize that in the relationships that we share with them, and just how meaningful they are in our lives. Which I mean, I guess to both of your unfortunate losses recently, we notice most in their absence sometimes. Which I guess in the case of Teddy, my dog, not having him for a while, it was its own form of loss and grieving, not knowing if he was coming back, and so, but all the same, a little bit challenging because like it, he's not dead, he's just not around. Um, so I think, yeah, they matter because of how significant they are in our lives, and and who we are.
I'm so glad you said that because it often is not recognized that if you lose a pet, so a number of people haven't been as fortunate as you were and Jeremy was to have the ability to make new law. And a number of courts are stuck in one or the other because it's easier, in my opinion. That's my opinion. But I know that a lot of judges don't ever think they can get it right, so they just leave the dog where it is, which may or may not be great. Um, but the difference is that you've lost something, but as you said so beautifully, it wasn't gone. It just was gone from you. And so that's why you and Jeremy, and I'm so grateful you're here, are going to talk about how you navigated the ability to thoughtfully bring this issue to a court that thankfully was willing to thoughtfully listen to your arguments and help create an outcome that benefited Teddy. It didn't benefit just you, Brett, and it didn't benefit your ex. Just it benefited Teddy. So I'm going to start, if it's okay, Jeremy, with Brett to say, tell us sort of a short form of the story, and then navigating that difficult time without Teddy, and then navigating the time now with Teddy. Would that be okay, Jeremy?
Oh, that'd be outstanding. Love to hear from Brett.
Yeah, so
we lawyers can talk forever, so that's why I want Brett to start.
yeah, I guess I don't know how far back to go. But yeah, before we even got Teddy, I had my other Pomeranian who actually I've shared very amicably with the previous partner, and actually he was on when we before we got Ted, my other dog was on the first date, and so we always knew we wanted to get a full-time dog, and kind of had that working model that it was working out well, and so before I was very reluctant to get another dog, given how that worked out, and we waited a few years and finally decided to get Ted, and it was on my insistence, on the condition that if anything did happen, hopefully not, that we would share him equally, given that that was working so well with my other dog, and very happily working out. And so with Ted, we got him. We had him for a number of years together. Very happily went to the puppy kindergarten and all that, and getting to care for him, which is just incredible. And he's a great, very easy dog. He's just amazing. But yeah, eventually, despite how well things worked out with Ted, things didn't work out in the relationship, and so we decided to call it. And I think the one thing that felt like it was always a certainty was that we, had agreed to share him, and trying to settle and figure out everything else, like the furniture and everything. Well, that was up for debate, but with the dog, it wasn't. And so afterwards, for some time, we did continue to share him, and it was working out as far as I could tell. And then suddenly I was getting to see him less and less for a whole variety of reasons that I was being given. And so we decided to reach out to Jeremy to try to find a mediator to say, how should we move forward, and just come to some agreement. If we do want to do things differently, what should that look like? And so I was looking to find someone who had experience in these sorts of situations, as odd as they seem in some ways. And then it, even though we were trying to try to figure out a way to mediate it, I think the other side decided to just cut things off and say we're done, which was a little bit to my surprise. So then we decided to try to move forward with trying to figure out, well, what rights do I have? I mean, we split the cost evenly. We split raising them, all of the work. I think if anything, I put a lot more in terms of the cost and some of the time, because I work from home, so I tend to spend a lot of time with him. And yeah, and then that went through a series of ups and downs in the legal battle, which Jeremy was amazing at helping me navigate, and really advocating. And yeah, through the course of it, it did work out happily in the end. And so I actually have him right here. So he's hiding under the couch. But yeah,
Family
it's worked
shot.
out quite well. Yeah, that's his one of his favorite spots. He likes to hide. Even since he was a puppy, he outgrew the couch that I had. He couldn't squeeze under it anymore. So I had to get a taller couch because he was still trying to do a
It's
little army
amazing what
crawl.
we do to accommodate our pets, right?
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, you'd see this little butt sticking out. He'd get his head under, and he's still trying to wedge in. And I'm like, okay, well, it's something's got to be done here. But yeah, no, it's worked out very, very happily, and despite the challenges throughout the journey here.
Yeah. Wow, this is so remarkable because it is it is often one side throwing down the gauntlet, saying no more for whatever reason, and there's no aspersion. So please, don't anyone think that one party is more right or less right than the other. It's simply that sometimes people just want to avoid having that conversation, or they might be getting legal advice that says just, possession's 9/10 of the law. So you've got them, they don't have them, and let them sue you, which of course creates that difficult interaction between the two parties who heretofore, using a legal word, were working it out. We're able to find a way forward. And that's why I mediate, because I like to help them reestablish that communication that helped them, that worked so well for them before. And yet it hasn't really entered into the divorce realm when it comes to pets because of the emotional piece. And yet it works so well because that's all mediation is the recognition of the emotional piece. So then you called Jeremy, and Jeremy, you mind picking it up from there? I mean, this seems like the best facts you could ever have because they knew they shared that a dog was shared before they got a dog, and they knew they and agreed to share the dog. So these are like golden facts.
Um, Looking back, they're golden facts.
Right.
But at the time, we didn't have a golden precedent. And
You had
so,
no precedent.
yeah, nothing. So, um, but what we had was Brett. And Brett is just, he's measured in his thoughts and he's measured in his expectations. And you started by saying that you two navigated thoughtfully how to bring the issue to the court and help create an outcome that benefited Teddy. Thoughtfully, that adverb is so important. And as lawyers, we can do it thoughtfully. That's how we do it. But most clients cannot do it thoughtfully. And so the reason this has worked, and it just made me think about what thoughtfully means. It's because Brett had the right amount of patience. Together, we had the right amount of planning, of pausing at times. Not that they're all P's, but in projecting for Brett the costs, the time, the counter arguments, what a loss would look like, what a win would look like. And this was years, at least 18 months of a process. And we won along the way and we lost along the way. But Brett gave us as lawyers the time we needed to think. And you don't bill for thinking. It's not down there for thinking, but we had to think about this and and figure out how to present this so that the judges see certain things and that they see who Brett is. And he's somebody who's so reasonable. How could you look past our reasonableness? He was denied his dog for so long, but he's not looking to punish. And um, so that is what we had good facts, but we had the right client at the right time. And we always talked about this could be the Lyman case that people refer to, and to actually have it in place like that is just it's it's something that I I think about every single day. It's just such an amazing accomplishment for me as a lawyer, for Brett as a pet owner, and then as Brett as the face of all pet owners. And we talked about this legacy that he had the courage in the right amount of thoughtfulness to say, I'm not doing this just for me. And it's time we see a change in the law. And to be on the other side of it now, it's everything we had hoped for has worked. And also we had planned for the worst along the way each time so that we kept everybody's expectations in check. And what Brett didn't do to us was pressure us. He knew we were working at it. He knew we were always thinking about it and talking about it. And he did his own research and he gave us some great legal ideas along the way based off some cases that he found. And because what we needed was analogies, since there's no other case that recognizes the joint shared ownership of a pet among unmarried people that could be enforceable. We had to find analogies, and he was really helpful with that part of it.
I have to say that it'll probably be the Lockman, Raymond v. Lockman Lovey versus the Lyman v. Teddy, because everyone knows Lovey who's done any sort of relationship. And that's where the judge said it should stay where it's known love and been loved. And that's great. And then what happens if something occurs and the person who's caring for the dog? I mean, I had this conversation with Judge Cooper, who is Travis v. Murray's judge. I said, great, taking the time to ask the questions, to have the parties bring in information for a day. And I know you just said it was 18 months, so a day is really not long enough, but that's a whole nother story. Being able to have the judges recognize that what's in the best interest of the pet is really to keep both people in the picture, because if something happens to one, then if you award the animal to one party and they lose their house, they lose their job, they unfortunately pass away, whatever, the dog might go to someone who the dog wouldn't necessarily choose. So tell me more, Jeremy, about how you approach that, because that was one of the most important pieces, I think, was that these people had shared the dog. The dog was living that life and thriving. And why not consider that the best interest of the pet might, in fact, be shared custody?
It was a key point to get across that I'm always saying that just because their relationship with each other changed doesn't mean that their relationship with their pet changed. But we acknowledged along the way that Ms. Lancer was a good owner. She did take good care of Teddy Bear. There was no doubt that she had accrued the same rights to possess, care for, and really, so the benefits and the burdens of owning Teddy Bear to the same extent Brett did. So that credibility and that recognition that she's an important part of Teddy Bear's life too, I just think it gave the judges this path to say, we can resolve this one. Like we can make it so everybody gets what they're looking for here, and everybody gives something up, but everybody gets what they're looking for here because Brett Lyman is saying, we get it. She should have half, but to have whole and to keep it from him is not right. So I just think in this day where you're trying to educate judges and get them to change their mindset about pets, it's the reasonableness is what is going to lead us there. The judge is open by asking me, why isn't this, it seems like you're trying to change the law. I said, well, and make pets, have
More
stand.
than property.
Yeah. And I said, well, we're not. I mean, we prepared for this question. We're not. We are not an animal rights law firm. We are pet owners' rights advocacy firm because it would have been, it's too much to try to change everything at once. And so here, it was just logical. I think we led them through several things about showing them, the judges, you have permission to do this. And they even referenced it in their decision because of old contract law and old property law. You can just combine them with what is now a modern day argument that's happening. And it's just the right next natural step, which judges might know that, but might not have the courage to do that. And these judges did.
And I think the courage also stems from their uh, ability to not be afraid that the agreement won't work out and you'll be back in their courtroom. I think that has been for a number of years the driving force in that I'm not doing a shared custody. I have people fighting over their kids already, coming back 8 times a week. I don't want the people with the dogs coming back, so I'm just going to award it and be done. And I think Judge Cooper said to me, well, I was hoping that they would work out something where they could share it after I awarded it to Murray, that they would work together. And I said, well, that would be really great if Murray felt she had to, but she
Right.
doesn't feel she has to, so she's not going to. So how did you surmount I don't want to have to enforce it in case Brett and his ex decided to not necessarily follow the agreement they made in court?
Well, they put that in the decision that sometimes this is not going to be feasible. And so that's certainly a weakness. But one thing I said to the judges was, if you go to any of the courthouses in Massachusetts, probably around the country, there are days in multiple sessions devoted to debt collection. Okay, and credit card companies bringing people in, and you have to sit through those in order to get your cases heard. And I used to be a debt collection attorney before all of this. I know what a waste of time it is. I know that only 5% of the people are going to make payments. I know that there's going to be a million excuses. And it's just moving things around, making no difference in anybody's life. I know we need debt collection to keep the economy more secure so people know if they owe money, they're going to be held accountable. But the amount of wasted days and times and effort, you can't tell me that having a discussion in court, an argument about a pet, is going to actually be less important than the thousands of debt collection cases that are heard on a weekly basis in Massachusetts. I will not accept that.
And
I
clearly not
can't
now,
accept that.
Jeremy, not now
Right.
with pets being such a part of the human animal bond. And that's not the animal rights, animal welfare, that's just science, that the human animal bond has created healthier lifestyles for us, both just by petting a cat and having it purr,
Right.
or walking a dog, or whatever it is you do. So these are tangible things that pets bring into our lives, and to take them away because the human people can't talk to each other, the pet suffers and the person who doesn't have the animal suffers.
Exactly, exactly. And you only have 15 minutes to argue, but another point that I was making was having this in place now, I think, is making less and less people call us. I really believe that because this is in place, that people who want to do what Lancer did here and say, I'm just keeping the dog myself, might then go to an attorney and say, who might say, yeah, but you're supposed to be sharing it. And so perhaps people are thinking twice about, oh, they do have, my partner, ex-partner does have rights now. So I argued in the sense that we are going to keep less of these from coming to court because people will know it's enforceable and this is what you engaged in. So don't think the court is going to suddenly stand behind you. Maybe that's wishful thinking because we'll never really be able to measure that by who doesn't call us. But I like to think that's another legacy of Brett Lyman and how he can impact the how busy the courts are with these by showing they're enforceable. And if you breach it, there's going to be some problems for you.
Yeah, the consequences are usually written in the decision if you breach it. And hopefully there's a little paragraph about going to someone like a mediator or something to have a conversation, because often I had one way back when their first exchange, the woman said, I can't exchange the dog now. And of course, the gentleman said, of course, it's the first exchange. You're not going to go by the rules, and you're going to lose the dog and this and that. And she just didn't want to say that she had to go into the hospital for serious medical issues she was having. And, there are some things you don't want to talk about with your ex, right? And in mediation, we were able to just calm everybody down. She was able to give enough information that she felt comfortable giving. Listen, I have to go away for 18 months. I won't be able to have the dog the next time. And could I keep him an extra 2 months this time? And then you'll have him for 18 months. That never would have occurred had there not been some stopgap, like you probably have in your agreement, that has them actually sitting down with someone who can hold a safe space, to have the conversation in a way where both of them feel protected, that they don't have to tell you my personal inner story, but that you understand why I'm violating it this time.
And that's the beauty of of having an independent party, someone like yourself who how else would they have found that out? I mean, taking a page out of your book, tomorrow night, we're having a four-way about a pet. And there's no mediator though. There should be a mediator, but this is sort of a precondition to the mediation because my client who has a pet doesn't know the other woman, and the other woman doesn't know my client. Um, the dog was given to somebody to care for a bit. He couldn't, and so he gave it to my client, who now is falling in love. But they each have this horrible view of each other. And in talking to the lawyer, I was like, well, why don't we get them to talk to each other? And so we're having a four-way Zoom where everybody's just going to talk to see maybe the past owner isn't that horrible person. The new owner isn't a horrible person, and they're thinking of things that don't even exist. So the goal is if they can feel better about each other and who might be caring for the dog, maybe we can find some middle ground instead of going to court. So it's such a better way
It
than
is
just
for the
filing
pet,
suit.
because when the pet, sees their old owner, unfortunately, they love them. They run up to them, they say hello. I mean, even I always say that even probably Michael Vick's dogs would have run up and said hello because it was all they knew, right? So
Right.
all of our dogs love us despite our faux pas. We wish we were the people our dogs think we are. We work and strive every day to be the good people that they think we are. Sometimes we make it. Sometimes I'm really terrible, and I don't get 3 walks in, but I get at least 2. But that is such an important part, Jeremy, that you're bringing them in and you are couching the discussion in a collaborative discussion. And if you can get one side, you only need one side. So this is what I do now. You only need one side to acknowledge and appreciate that the dog was well cared for by the other party. Like you said, you kept saying in court that Miss Lancer was just as wonderful an owner of Teddy as Brett was. And that's what you need to have. You need to sort of share with your client, and hopefully the other attorney will share with their client. The dog is in a really lucky place. It has 2 people who love the bejesus out of it. And so what a lucky dog, thinking of all the dogs that are dropped off in a shelter because of different changes in people's lives. And so let's see what we can work out. It'll never be the same as it was before both these people knew the dog, but it can be something new, better, and different for the dog. So I always say, getting it right for the dog over being right. Yes, I own it. Yes, I bred it. Yes, it lived with me for 10 years. I've had several of those cases. And it's really hard for people to get beyond the fact that, listen, I had this dog. It was my dog, and now it's with you. And then the laws of the land, which say if you abandon it for 5 days, it then goes to the person who's taking care of it. And if you would just have a moment to say, absolutely, that's the law, that's what goes on, that's the black and white. And now let's go to the gray, which is the dog wouldn't have been here without the care of the person who took care of it for 5 years before. And now we need to see how we might be able to work it out. And maybe it won't be a share, but it could be vacations, it could be, all sorts of things. I've had so many very weird but workable solutions between people who have co-owned dogs or who have, like yours, gotten the dog from a shelter. Shelters, if your dog gets picked up and you don't pick it up in a certain number of days, it can be rescued and then you never see it again. But I'd love to think that the person who rescues it wouldn't say, so sorry, my dog now, but rather, I am so glad that 2 people really love Fluffy. And I think this is where you're going with this, Jeremy. 2 people really love Fluffy. Let's see how we might be able to figure out what's best for Fluffy. Because, as you said, the person who's caring for it now is a good person, and the person who cared for it all that time is also a good person.
But not everybody is Brett Lyman who's willing to recognize that.
I have to be right, not get it right for the dog. I mean, it's my mantra. Unfortunately, your pet doesn't hate the person it used to know. You wish it would, but it doesn't. And if something happened to you, wouldn't it be great that you had an heir and a spare? You know, I do that map program all the time where I have people make a plan for their pet because most people don't. They just think it's going to fall like manna from heaven. And here you have a built-in person who would take the dog if something happened to you. What happens if you fall down, break your leg, or you know, have to go into the hospital for some procedure? These people would be happy to take the dog. You're going on vacation for a month, or you're going to a wedding or whatever you're doing. You know, these kinds of things can work it out. And is it a perfect world? No, I'm sure Brett would love to still, you know, have Teddy all the time. However, some of the time is much better than none of the time.
And that easing, which he alluded to, of the anxiety of not knowing. You know, it's one thing to know, okay, my dog has died and there's no chance of seeing her again physically. But for him, my dog is still here in the same state, and I don't know how he's doing. And that's a feeling, that's a loss that I didn't experience with Maisie, and I'm sure I'm sure it's just as, if not, it's probably more painful because you want to do something about it and you still have time.
Yeah. And and that might be something that the clients who you're meeting with would recognize. You know, is it better to just be, you know, one and done, never see them again, or recognize that if you win, you know, okay, great, but if you lose, you'll never see the dog again. So why don't you work on
Mm.
something that would assist you in being a part of this dog's life going forward?
Yeah, one thing for me, because I with my underdog, I've co-owned for he's 13 now. It's worked out quite well.
Yeah.
And
And he's a
so for me,
Pomeranian, so he's only halfway.
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. That's the hope, right? My plan, they all live forever is the goal. So we'll see. But I guess for me, I had the benefit of seeing how well that works out, of seeing their cases where just last year, actually, he's getting a little bit older, and he had a very severe stroke, and we weren't sure if he was going to pull through it. And but his co-owner, my previous partner, she was due to give birth the next day. Um, and the vet was telling us, like, we're not sure if uh, if he's going to pull through this, or what we need to do. And we found there's a specialty vet out here that's quite good. They had a specialist in, I guess, was it a pulmonary specialist? And it worked out that I was the one who was able to take him, because obviously, with her giving birth the next day, that didn't work out so
He
well,
was a
right?
bit busy.
Exactly. And I think we were both relieved to have that, right? And that's probably the most extreme example, but it comes up, every so often, where you see that um, things come up, right? And to have someone else that uh, cares about the dog or pet, and loves them as much as you do. I mean, it's another thing when you have to leave a pet with someone else to care for them, and you hope that they care a lot and that they're going to give as good care as you will. And I think in this sort of situation, seeing where you really can be confident that the pet is as happy there, and happy with the co-owner, and that they care about them as much as you do. um it was very clear to me that is the best thing that I could do. That is the best possible outcome for him. And yeah, so having that as
A
having the
parachute.
confidence of that. Yeah, and it actually, I mean, I was saying earlier, Teddy's gonna need to go in for an ultrasound next week, and his co-owner, she's not able to. It sounds like there's scheduling conflicts, and I said that's fine. I can just pick him up for the day, and I'll take him in, and that'll work out. So having that as an option with each of them, it's just it's really clear to me that that's the better choice. And I think, yeah, a lot of this is it's conflict resolution, right? And it's difficult because I think from a legal standpoint, it's complex, but then obviously for most clients emotionally, it's also complex, which you don't have that with all sort of legal conflicts. But I think in this case, my attitude was basically, if you care enough to fight about it, you care enough not to, um, and to try to figure out a way to work it out and to have the patience to do that. And so I think I guess one thing is that the judges seemed as though uh, they were concerned that if they opened the door for people to have pets as one more thing to fight over and to escalate legally, that that would open the door to more conflict. But I kind of view it in some ways the opposite, right? It's a reason not to, because you both want to care for the pet, and so making sure that both parties are respectful and amicable, and that you work things out so that you can have a good working relationship to continue to care for the pet is important. Um, so in some ways, I think it's like I said, in some ways it brings out the best in us as well. So
Yeah, I'm hopeful that because of your tenacity, that lawyers will use more mediators, not because that's what I am, but because that will give them the opportunity to have a conversation with their client they can't have, right, Jeremy? Because some clients don't want to have you tell them, take a breath, listen to what they have to say, appreciate and acknowledge what they've done to care for the dog, appreciate and acknowledge their role in the dog's life. They don't want to hear that because they just want the dog. They just want to get it back. So if you have a mediator in the room, you can have that conversation because they're talking to the mediator first, telling them why they should get the dog. And then as you're a party and you're listening to the story that you've told yourself that this is a terrible person who took my dog, or, this person isn't listening, or this person can't take care of the dog, or whatever it is that you've built up in your mind goes away when they talk about how they take care of the dog. Or, if they're telling fibs, they can be called out on their fibs. That isn't necessarily true, but not in a way that is the same as when you're in court, right, Jeremy, where it's always adversarial. In
Right.
mediation, if you have a really good mediator, they're going to appreciate and acknowledge how everyone feels and ask them more about why they feel that way. So if they're not telling the truth, they have to admit that and take on the responsibility and accountability. And if they are telling the truth, then the other party has to take on the accountability and responsibility that they've dropped the ball. But it creates that place where, and if courts can do this, can send it off to someone who's skilled in this, because some commercial mediators and contract mediators will also handle it like saying, oh my God, this is property, just decide who's going to take the dog and move on. You really need some skilled people who, like Jeremy, take the time. Oh, look at the baby. Take the time
Oh,
to have that emotion addressed, because as Jeremy said when he talked about Maisie, this is a part of their life. This is such an emotional piece for them, and it's not something that's black and white. It's so totally gray and opaque, and they need to talk about it and feel as if everyone is listening and understanding. And once, at least in my situations that I've handled, once you feel heard, respected, and understood for your point of view, you are more likely to listen to somebody else's point of view. But until that happens, it's just going to be us against them. And that never works out well for Teddy. He's so cute. Look at him. He's so cute. Oh, look at the baby.
yeah, he heard we have guests, so he's getting
He's like,
he's on
uh-oh.
guard. Yeah, he's ready to
Sorry, he's
protect the
protecting
home.
his dad. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Jeremy, I'm going to give you the last word because this has been such an important case for you. Lots of coverage in the newspaper, which I was so thrilled for, because beside being a good friend, you're a fabulous attorney, and that you do take time and are very considerate of your clients. And as you said, which is so amazing, Brett was such a great client to have because he gave you the time to build the case, to make the story, to tell the story, and to have the court understand the story, which is why it turned out the way it did.
well, this certainly, for somebody who changed careers in their middle age, this I was not on a path to change law or make a difference. And through people like Brett and through pets that belong to other people, uh, I have just found just so much fulfillment for myself, for my duty as a lawyer, I think to make change and to leave this better than I found it. And I know from enthusiasm from winning this case, I believe that the judges opened some other doors through their decision that there's another Brett Lyman out there. Maybe it's a pet custody case, maybe it's a veterinary malpractice case, maybe it's an emotional support animal case, but there's another client out there through whom we are going to make positive change for pets and their owners. And um, I would just tell the appeals court, we're coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if we are going to really recognize the value of the human animal bond, we need to recognize that pets are much more than property. And they now in 7 states have a little more oomph because judges are required to consider their best interests. And I think that if that's the case, we need to help judges know how to foster in the attorneys representing the clients what you did here to educate them and to help them make the best decision for the parties, not necessarily just take an hour, hear what somebody has to say, and decide. I mean, that's why I don't arbitrate, because I don't think I know what's best for someone. But I do think that clearly I need to know all the information.
It's such a benefit, the show that you have for me. I have 5 pages of notes from things you said during the last, and Brett said during the last 45 minutes. Thank you for doing what you do. And
Well,
it's a great outlet for me to be able to share the good
oh,
times and the
absolutely.
bad.
I am so glad you had time for us today. This is such an important case. These are such important people to thank and recognize for, as you said, being patient, taking the time, being thoughtful. I always say, if you watch the way your pets treat you and live their lives with you, we wouldn't have any litigation, because really they don't fight very much. And when they do, they figure it out pretty quick because nobody wants to get hurt. I wish as humans, we would do the same thing.
What a valid point. Yeah.
Just follow what your dog would do. Just, that adage of, I wish I was the person my dog thought I was. Let's try to bring that forward a little bit more, because if you asked your dog, unfortunately, they don't hate your ex. Unfortunately, they don't hate the person who might have taken care of them and didn't know they were your dog or whatever. Recognize that and then try to work it out, because really just keep it focused on the animal, which, that means getting it right over being right. So I'm so grateful both of you are here. What a wonderful Why Do Pets Matter podcast. You have just elevated it to such a high degree, but of course, Jeremy, you always do. And I love you so much. Brett, it was a pleasure meeting you. Please kiss Teddy for me. Send me pictures of the new pet when you get it, so I can add it to my array of animals that I have. And if you have any pictures you want to share, Brett, send them to me, because I take a release so that I can use them in my PowerPoints. But I love you both. Thank you both for being here. This is Deborah Hamilton. This was Why Do Pets Matter? And I'm so grateful that I'm here helping people love their pets fully. Take care.